The first thing I did when I woke from my rebirth was tear up the Taylor Group's offer letter. In my last life, I died heroically shielding her from a bullet on the street, only to see her rush into another man's arms. This time, I only wanted to get as far away as possible, but that fire-red Ferrari blocked my path like a beast. The window rolled down, and she looked at me with ice-cold, tear-bright eyes. "You died so gloriously last life, so this life? Where are you running from?" The sharp smell of disinfectant mixed with the familiar, cutting trace of an expensive aromatherapy scent, like a needle stabbing deep into my muddled mind. I snapped my eyes open. The blinding white light made me squint. What came into view was an immaculate white ceiling. A hospital? A fierce headache hit. Countless shattered memory fragments flashed like a runaway marquee, battering my brain. The glittering arena of wealth and fame, treacherous business traps, buckets of rain, a cold gun muzzle, the screeching of brakes, and, after I was shot, the figure who pushed me with their last strength, Sophia Taylor. And after she shoved me away, she didn't hesitate to fling herself toward that young man, Noah Carter, urgently checking if he was hurt. That concerned look was something I had never had. It was the last scene I saw before my consciousness sank into darkness, burned into me like a brand. I propped myself up. Pain stung the back of my hand, and the clear 4-tube swung. I ripped out the needle. A bead of crimson welled up instantly. My gaze swept to the bedside table. On an open finance magazine, the headline, Taylor Group Management Trainee Program Final Interview List Announced, stood out starkly. The date, glaringly, was the day before the turning point of my fate in my previous life. Reborn. An absurd, terrifying thought seized me. Not a cultivator's transmigration rebirth, but a return to the most important starting point of my life and the origin of all my suffering. The Taylor Group Management Trainee Final Interview Day. On the bedside table lay a finely produced brochure, Life's Pause and Restart. Outlook on Taylor Biotech's Sleeper Cryogenic Resurrection Project. I remembered that in my last life the project was dismissed as a fairy tale by outsiders, a money-burning gimmick moving slowly. A thought flashed through my head like lightning, too quick to grasp. I didn't have time to ponder. Panic and resolve washed over me. No, I could not repeat the same mistake. Stay away from Sophia Taylor. Stay away from the vortex that would damn me forever. I swung my legs out of bed. My body was still weak, but my will was iron. Ignoring the nurse's cries, I stumbled out of the ward. Outside, the sky was leaden. Pea-sized raindrops rattled against the hospital corridor windows, weaving a hazy curtain of water. I burst out of the hospital doors. Icy rain drenched me instantly. The chill bit to the bone, yet cleared my clouded mind somewhat. Looking up through the sheets of rain toward the city center, the twin skyscrapers that symbolized top-tier wealth and power bore the 4 giant neon logos of Taylor Group, like 4 cold, merciless eyes piercing the rain and locking onto me. In my past life, I stepped through that door full of ambitions and a secret infatuation with Sophia Taylor, only to sew a bride's gown for someone else and end up dying miserably on the street. This time, I just want to run away. I hailed a taxi and gave the address, Taylor Building. I was going there not to apply, but to sever this damned connection for good. Taylor Building, top floor, final interview conference room. The atmosphere was solemn and tense. At the head of the table, Sophia Taylor wore a sharply tailored black haute couture suit, her expression indifferent, eyes as sharp as ice blades, appraising the final candidates. She radiated an aura that kept others at bay, as if born to stand at the top of the pyramid. It was my turn. I drew a deep breath, ignoring the faint admiration Sophia Taylor had shown me in my past life, ignoring the envious and jealous glances around me, and ignoring the probing look she now fixed on me. I stepped up to Sophia Taylor without handing over a meticulously prepared proposal, without delivering a smooth self-introduction. To everyone's astonishment, I took from the assistant the offer letter embossed with the golden Taylor emblem, the paper that symbolized a fresh start. Then, under Sophia Taylor's suddenly cold gaze, I expressionlessly tore that paper, which had carried so many people's dreams, into pieces bit by bit. "Sorry, I give up." My voice was calm and even, but like a stone dropped into a deep pool, it sent ripples through the silent conference room. The fragments fluttered down like white butterflies. I didn't look at Sophia Taylor again. I turned and strode out of the room that had once cost me my life, amid a deathly silence and countless incredulous stares. Outside the Taylor building, the rain hadn't let up. Cold raindrops washed over me and scrubbed the knots in my chest. I let out a long breath as if I'd set down a 1,000-pound burden. It's over. It's all over. I hailed another taxi, wanting to get away from this place of trouble as fast as possible. The taxi drove steadily through the rain, merging into traffic. I leaned against the chill window and closed my weary eyes. Flashbacks of my brutal death and Sophia Taylor throwing herself at Noah Carter gnawed at my nerves like maggots of bone. Just when I thought the dust had settled, screech. An ear-piercing screech of tires scraping the road, followed by the engine's savage roar, shredded the sound of the rain. A blazing red Ferrari SF90 Straydale, like an out-of-control beast, executed an extremely dangerous rear-side drift and slammed sideways in front of the taxi. It stopped so close it was almost touching the taxi's bumper. The taxi driver was terrified and slammed on the brakes. The car rocked violently before coming to a precarious halt. "What the hell? Are you trying to die?" The driver spat, still shaken. I was thrown forward by the sudden chaos, my heart pounding. I shot up, and through the rain-blurred windshield, fixed my eyes on the arrogant red supercar blocking the road. The driver's side window slowly rolled down. A hand in a black leather glove rested on the sill, fingers long and powerful. Then a face appeared that could make any man hold his breath. It was Sophia Taylor. Rain had dampened a few stray strands of hair on her forehead, clinging to her smooth skin. Her face lacked its usual coldness. Those deep, pond-like eyes were now fixed on me in the taxi's back seat. The corner of her mouth actually curved up slightly, a smile complex and unreadable, tinged with playfulness, a hint of madness, even. I thought I saw a flash of moisture in those eyes. Her voice was low but pierced through the patter of rain, entering my ear clearly with an unquestionable force and some indescribable pain. "Ethan Johnson," she said my name, the final tone tilting up. "You died so dashing in your last life. This life. What are you hiding from?" Boom! That sentence was like a thunderclap, striking hard above my head. My blood seemed to freeze instantly. My pupils constricted, and I stared in disbelief at that familiar yet strange face through the rain. What did she say? Last life. How did she know about my last life? Could it be she did too? A massive shock and the pent-up resentment for my previous life erupted inside my chest like a volcano. I flung the car door open, ignoring the torrential rain, and stormed to the Ferrari's window in a few strides. The rain soaked me through in an instant, but I didn't notice. My hand slammed onto the car roof. I leaned over, my eyes bloodshot, and I stared at the woman inside. Almost roaring, "Sophia Taylor, stop pretending here. Why did you chase me? Go find your dear brother Noah Carter. Go share your Taylor empire with him. I, Ethan Johnson, will not accompany you this life." My voice sounded fractured and furious amid the rain, each word soaked in the despair and unwillingness of my past life. I had thought rebirth was a blessing from heaven, a chance to stay away, yet the person I desperately tried to avoid had burst back into my world in such a mad way, and dropped a bomb that could overturn my understanding. Sophia Taylor watched my out-of-control fury, and the smile vanished from her face, replaced by a deeper, more complex expression. She didn't answer my accusation immediately. She simply gazed intently at my rain-washed face. In the depths of those icy eyes, some tumultuous emotion seemed to be churning and struggling. Rain dripped down my jawline, striking the Ferrari's gleaming body. We confronted each other through the window, silently, amid the noisy curtain of rain and stagnant traffic. The shadow of death from the last life, this life's bizarre reunion, and that earth-shattering last life line were like an invisible net tightly entangling us. My shout echoed in the rain, carrying the unresolved anger of my past life. Sophia Taylor merely watched me in silence. Those eyes were like a bottomless vortex, the emotions rolling inside, so complex they startled me. After a moment, she suddenly opened the car door and stepped out with precise movement. Her expensive tailored suit was instantly drenched, outlining her upright, slightly slender figure. Unbothered, She walked straight up to me. We were close enough to feel each other's breath, mingled with rain and a sharp scent of perfume. Done venting, her voice returned to its usual coolness, though if you listened closely, there was a barely perceptible tightness. I panted. Rain ran from my black hair into my eyes, blurring my vision, but the anger of betrayal kept me from backing down as I shot back. Sophia Taylor. I'll say it again. Stay away from me. Sophia Taylor tilted her head slightly. Raindrops traced the graceful line of her neck. She didn't answer me, instead throwing out a question I hadn't expected. 10 years ago, West Misty Mountain, that anonymous scholarship donation. You arranged for it to be transferred, through others, into the account of that place called Greenstone Village Primary School, didn't you? My whole body went rigid. That was something I did not long after graduating in my previous life, when my career had just begun to take off. I came from poverty and knew how education could change a fate. I anonymously funded a primary school in a remote mountain area. It was one of the softest secrets in my heart, never mentioned to anyone, including Sophia Taylor in my past life. How could she possibly know? You investigated me? My voice trembled with shock and caution. That is not important. Sophia Taylor's tone was flat. What matters is that Taylor Group took on that debt of gratitude. That primary school later became a key beneficiary of the Taylor Charity Fund. My heart sank, and a foreboding rose up. Just as I feared, Sophia Taylor lifted her chin slightly. Rain hit the delicate line of her jaw, and her gaze carried an uncompromising control as she made clear. So, Ethan Johnson, you owe Taylor Group. Now, on behalf of Taylor Group, I demand you immediately fulfill the agreement and join the group's strategic investment department. She paused, her stare like an icicle piercing me. Don't think about running again. Otherwise, I will make the whole industry know what happens to someone who betrays trust and abandons even a scholarship they were shown. Your career will end here. I trembled with anger. This was barefaced intimidation and coercion. What damned agreement? I never signed anything. A verbal agreement is still an agreement. What I, Sophia Taylor, say is an agreement. Her tone was decisive, laced with the arrogance and force typical of the Taylor heir. I want to see you in strategic department at 9 tomorrow morning. Be 1 minute late and bear the consequences. With that, she no longer looked at my ashen face, turned, opened the car door, and slid back into that flaming red Ferrari. The engine growled low. The sports car made a clean U-turn, splashing water as it sped away into the rain-dimmed traffic. I was left standing in the middle of the road, soaked by cold rain, gripped by anger, humiliation, confusion, and a deep helplessness. It felt as if I had been dragged into an invisible net again, and the one holding it was the woman I had sworn to avoid. The taxi driver cautiously poked his head in. Sir, are you still going? I wiped the rain from my face. My eyes were terrifyingly cold. Go. Where else could I go? Sophia Taylor's threat was no empty bluff. With Taylor Group's influence, crushing someone like me with no backing would be nothing. I slammed the car door and sat back in the rear seat, hoarsely giving an address, the address of my cramped rented room. The driver didn't dare ask more and hurriedly started the car. All the way, I was silent as I stared at the city scene streaking past the window. Blurred by rain, my mind churned by Sophia Taylor's chilling words about a past life and her hardline tactic of using favors to coerce. What exactly did she want? Had she really been reborn too? If so, what was her motive in clinging to me? Was it to use me more easily and then push me into the abyss once again? The whole strategic investment department fell into an eerie silence. All eyes shone on Sophia Taylor and me like searchlights. The pressure in the air almost made me suffocate. I looked into Sophia Taylor's uncompromising eyes and slowly stood up. My movements were measured, but my heart felt frozen. The colleagues around us didn't even dare to breathe. Even a fool could tell the next moment would be catastrophic. Miss Taylor, my voice was clear and calm, even deliberately polite in a distant way, but each word fell like an icicle. Thank you for your confidence in me. I'm sorry, but I don't believe I'm capable enough to take on the responsibility of partnering with you. So as not to delay the group's important projects, I request to withdraw from this team, or to be paired with another colleague. Despite their efforts to suppress it, a ripple of low gasps and murmurs burst through the crowd. Refuse the air. In public. No doubt they thought I was either crazy or fed up with living. The supervisor's face went ashen in an instant, sweat visibly trickling down. He frantically tried to make faces at me, his lips trembling as if to say something to salvage the situation, but under Sophia Taylor's icebound aura, not a single word would come out. The moment my words fell, Sophia Taylor's expression froze completely. Those eyes, always sharp as knives, roiled now with explosive waves, disbelief, mortifying offense, and a deeper, bone-chilling cold sharpened by the pain of being provoked. She stared at me as if trying to dissect me with her gaze. I met her without flinching. My look was a dead, icy lake and a repelling chill. The image of her lunging at Noah Carter in my last life, like a poisoned dagger, twisted again in my chest, making me raise my defenses even higher and thicker. Time froze for a few seconds, each second stretching like a century. Smack! A piercing, crisp crack suddenly tore through the suffocating silence. Sophia Taylor abruptly raised her hand and hurled the latest, blade-thin tablet, clearly her personal device, forcefully onto the desk in front of me. The screen exploded into a spiderweb of cracks that spread grotesquely, reflecting the slight distortion of her beautiful face wrought by rage. The loud noise made everyone shudder. Incapable, Sophia Taylor's voice shot up, sharp as hail against glass, carrying unprecedented pressure. Ethan Johnson, what do you think this place is? A market where you can pick and choose. She stepped forward. The click of her high heels on the floor sounded like war drums as her powerful presence swept across the office, making it hard to breathe. Listen, her gaze was like cold chains locking onto me. I am the heir of the Taylor Group. This department, this project, everything here. She suddenly swept her hand around, and with the final slender finger wielding the force of 1,000 weights, she jabbed precisely at the tip of my nose, including you. All under my control. I told you to be my partner. You don't get a second choice. Understand, the last 3 words were forced out through clenched teeth, laden with absolute authority and a near-paranoid possessiveness. The entire office fell deathly silent. You could hear a pin drop. Everyone was stunned by Sophia Taylor's sudden, utterly unrestrained outburst. Was this still the composed, aloof heiress? This was clearly someone utterly enraged, displaying absolute control, a tyrant. My body tensed like a drawn bow when her finger jabbed at me. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. My eyes darkened as if about to spill ink. Her dominance and aggression only confirmed what I'd known in my past life. In her eyes, what was ironclad law and other people's feelings? Worthless. Just as the atmosphere reached a blade-drawn, freezing point, Sophia, a clear, gentle male voice with a touch of puzzlement, sounded from the office entrance. Everyone's gazes, including mine and Sophia Taylor's, turned instinctively toward the sound. Noah Carter stood there in a casual suit, sunlight cleanly illuminating him, a document folder in his hand. Handsome, with features somewhat similar to Sophia's but far softer and more harmless in temperament. Sophia Taylor's adopted younger brother, Noah Carter. He looked startled by the strange tension in the office and by Sophia's rare loss of composure, his face written with worry and confusion. Sophia, are you okay? What's going on? His eyes scanned the shattered tablet on the floor, then looked at Sophia's ashen face and me, radiating cold resistance. His brows knitted. Noah Carter's arrival was like a match struck, instantly igniting the fury and humiliation I'd been suppressing to the breaking point. Seeing that expression of concern on his face, the image of Sophia lunging toward him in my past life before she died flashed vividly through my mind. All reason, all restraint snapped at that moment. Stop pretending. I spun around abruptly, not looking at Sophia, but at Noah. My voice shook with unbearable rage. Each word was forced from between my teeth, soaked in cutting sarcasm and despair. Go and bask in your perfect sister and brother romance. Ms. Taylor's special partner is someone I, Ethan Johnson, can't possibly reach. I didn't look at anyone else, completely ignoring Sophia's sudden deathly pallor and Noah's stupefied expression. Surrounded by an almost tangible, icy rage, I strode toward the emergency exit, desperate to escape this suffocating cage at once. I practically threw open the heavy iron door of the emergency stairwell, A loud clang echoed behind me. I charged up the cold stairs, the chill air flooding my lungs, doing nothing to quench the fire in my chest, and instead fanning it. Why? Why could she, Sophia Taylor, toy with me like a chess piece? Why, after what she did to me in my former life, did she have to humiliate me and force me to her side in this life, just to satisfy her ridiculous need for control? And Noah Carter, her adopted brother, who she always put first. Every time I see them together, it feels like a knife gouging at my heart, reminding me how foolish and ridiculous I was when I died in my past life. Only one thought runs through my mind. Run. The farther the better. At the end of the stairwell is a heavy iron door leading to the rooftop. I push with all my strength, and the howling wind immediately rushes in, whipping my coat so hard I can barely stand. Standing at the top of the city, beneath my feet is a cold jungle of steel and concrete. The rain has stopped. The sky is oppressive leaden gray, exactly like my mood. The bitter wind slashes my face like a blade, bringing a brief, stinging clarity. I walk to the edge of the rooftop and brace my hands on the cold railing, breathing hard, trying to suppress the turmoil inside. It's useless. Scenes from my past life, the humiliation of this one, Sophia Taylor's icy commands, Noah Carter's innocent face, the shattered tablet. Everything is a heavy iron chain strangling my neck. At that moment, the rapid click of high heels and the sound of the iron door opening come from behind. No need to turn around. I know who it is. Sophia Taylor has caught up. The gale has mussed her chignon. A few strands cling messily to her pale cheek. Her breathing is unsteady too, but her gaze is sharper than before, more complex and harder to read. She walks closer and stops a few meters away from me. Ethan Johnson. Her voice drifts in the wind, fragile yet carrying an unprecedented stubbornness. What did you mean by what you just said? I whirl around, my eyes bloodshot, like a trapped beast driven to the edge. What do you mean? Sophia Taylor, are you still pretending to be stupid? You want me to spell it out for you? Fine, I'll tell you. I point toward the rooftop entrance, my voice rising with agitation. Noah Carter, your dear little brother, the person you hold so dear. In my past life, for him, you didn't hesitate to shove me away while I was taking a bullet for you, right as I was about to die. In this life, are you trying the same trick, tying me to your side to showcase your sibling devotion, or to make it easier to use me again? That's enough. Sophia Taylor cuts me off sharply, her body trembling with emotion, those usually icy eyes now burning with a maddening flame I've never seen before. You don't know anything at all. At that moment, the rooftop door is pushed open again. Noah Carter has caught up as well. He must have heard the last part of my outburst, and shock and disbelief color his face. Sophia, Ethan Johnson, what are you talking about? What do you mean took a bullet in the past life? What's going on? Noah urges, trying to get closer. Don't come near me. I shoot him a look that's cold and cutting, full of undisguised disgust. Seeing the depth of hatred in my eyes and my blatant rejection of Noah Carter, a resentment, anger, and despair that Sophia has held in for far too long erupts inside her like a volcano. She suddenly pulls a document from her briefcase, rushes a few steps up to me, and, against the roaring wind, uses all her strength to slap the paper down hard onto my chest. Open your eyes and look clearly. Sophia Taylor's voice is so sharp it almost tears through the wind, filled with a do-or-die resolution. See clearly who the person you call the one dear to your heart really is. The document flutters noisily in the gusts. I instinctively grab it and lower my head to look. Black and white, it was a striking DNA paternity test report. The client was Sophia Taylor, the tested individual was Noah Carter, and the other column. My gaze locked onto the cold, bolded word in the conclusion line. Based on existing information and DNA analysis results, it is supported that Noah Carter and Daniel Taylor, Sophia Taylor's deceased adoptive father, share a biological blood relationship. The document was stamped with the authoritative seal of the Forensic Center. My brain went buzz and went blank in an instant. I looked up at Sophia Taylor in disbelief. Sophia Taylor's chest heaved violently, her face pale without a trace of color, the whites of her beautiful eyes rimmed with red. She stared at me, every word like a bloodied accusation. Noah Carter is my adoptive father Daniel Taylor's biological son. He was the only bloodline he protected with his life in the massacre that wiped out our enemy's family. Before he died, he grabbed my hand and said only one thing. "Sophia, protect your brother, protect him with your life." Her voice choked, thick with nasal tone, but she still stubbornly held her head high. "All you know is that I threw myself at him. All you know is that I cared for him. But do you know I was fulfilling a promise to my adoptive father? I was repaying the life-saving debt he paid with his life. What you saw was never love. It was duty. It was a shackle." The wind blew through her loose hair. Her thin figure teetered on the edge of the rooftop, yet she erupted with astonishing strength. The truth, ripped open and bleeding, lay naked before me, completely shattering the high wall of understanding I had built across 2 lives. Noah Carter stood not far away, watching Sophia Taylor slam the DNA report onto Ethan Johnson's chest. His eyes swept over the document, and a flash of comprehension and deeper pain crossed his face. He opened his mouth and finally let out a heavy sigh. "Ethan, I know you hate me, think Sophia is biased. But do you know every time you got jealous or angry because of me, Sophia would scold you on the surface, but behind your back, she'd secretly be happy for a long time?" Noah Carter's voice also caught. She would say, "That fool finally knows how to care about me." I felt struck by lightning and froze where I stood. The DNA report in my hand felt as if it weighed 1,000 pounds, and like a branding iron it burned my palm. I looked at the report, then at Sophia Taylor, completely unraveling, stubborn yet fragile, and then at Noah Carter's bitter face. That final scene from my past life, the ironclad evidence I had regarded as betrayal, was now given a completely different, suffocatingly heavy interpretation. At that moment, my defenses split open with a tremendous, bottomless crack. Inside the cold, hard barrier was an unprecedented bewilderment and agony. The rooftop wind seemed ready to sweep everything away, along with the newly torn, still bleeding truth. I clutched the cold DNA report, my knuckles white from the grip. Every word on the page felt like a hammer, striking my freshly cracked heart. Sophia Taylor's near collapse of accusation, Noah Carter's bitter additions. They were like icy sea water, drowning me, suffocating me. Duty? Shackles? Repaying a debt? Not particularly fond of Noah Carter. Even would be happy because I was jealous. This absurd truth felt like a rusty, blunt knife cutting back and forth across my heart, bringing a belated, bone-deep pain. The betrayal I died for in my past life actually stemmed from heavy promise? Then what was I? A laughable sacrifice born of a huge misunderstanding? A vast sense of absurdity and a powerless feeling of being toyed with by fate left me speechless. I could only stand rooted to the spot as the gale tore at me. Sophia Taylor, having finished venting, seemed drained of all strength. She stopped looking at me, roughly wiped her face with her sleeve, indistinguishable whether she was wiping away rain or tears. But she straightened that slender back that seemed capable of bearing 1,000-pound burden, her voice hoarse from shouting, yet regaining its customary, unquestionable commanding tone. "Come with me." Having said that, she ignored everyone else, turned, and with still precise but noticeably hollow steps, walked toward the private elevator to the building's top floor. Noah Carter glanced at me with concern, but in the end silently followed Sophia Taylor. I stood there, my mind blank for a few seconds. Then an irresistible urge to know the whole truth drove me to move. I needed answers. A complete answer about all of this. I silently followed. The elevator went straight to the building's top floor, Sophia Taylor's private kingdom. The view was dizzyingly expansive. The decor was the ultimate in cold, hard minimalism. Outside the huge floor-to-ceiling windows, the city's bustling night scene spread out, cold and aloof. Sophia Taylor kept walking, heading directly for a heavy alloy door that gleamed with a metallic chill. Its lock was complex, requiring both fingerprint and iris verification. Noah Carter stopped outside the door and made a small "please" gesture to me, his expression complicated and hard to read. The door slid open soundlessly. Inside was not the luxurious office one might expect, but a vast space filled with a futuristic technological feel. Under cold white lights, various precise instruments flickered with pale blue glows. In the exact center of the space stood a large, streamlined silver-white pod, a cryosleep chamber one would only see in sci-fi films. A chill sheen rippled across the pod's surface, connected beside it to complex life support systems and monitoring screens pulsing with data. Sophia Taylor walked to the cold pod, and, with her back to me, her delicate fingers stroked the cold shell with an indescribable mixture of longing and pain. Do you recognize it? Sophia Taylor's voice was very soft, yet in this deathly quiet space, it was painfully clear. Sleeper Project. The protagonist of that brochure, by your bedside. My heart plummeted, and a more incredible, hair-raising thought rose uncontrollably. Sophia Taylor slowly turned around. There were no tear tracks left on her face, only a near-transparent pallor and bone-deep exhaustion. She looked at me, her gaze terrifyingly calm, as if recounting someone else's story. In your last life after you died. Her voice paused, as if something choked it, but quickly recovered. The Sleeper Project, dismissed by the outside world as fantastical and a bottomless money pit, became my only hope. I staked all of Taylor Group Airship shares, went all in, threw every resource at it. A faint, bitter curve lifted the corner of her mouth. The board called me mad. The media said grief had clouded my judgment. They weren't wrong. Her gaze fell back to the cryogenic pod, emitting a pale blue glow. A barely perceptible tremor touched her voice. I wagered everything on one hope so slim it was almost non-existent, to preserve the last remnants of your biological data, to wait until the technology matured, and then bring you back. She pointed at the cold, star-like chamber shimmering in blue. This experimental pod. Sophia Taylor's voice was soft but struck my heart like a heavy hammer, making my soul tremble, was not for immortality, not for fortune. Her eyes cut through the icy air and landed squarely in my shocked gaze. It was only to get you back. She finally looked at me again. Deep in those frozen eyes now reflected my stunned, disoriented face and a love so nearly desperate it had been suppressed across 2 lifetimes. Did you think you were the only one to come back, Ethan Johnson? She tilted her head slightly, and a tear burst from her eye, without warning, sliding down her pallid, almost translucent cheek and striking the cold floor, shattering into crystalline dust. Every time I saw you get jealous over that damn Noah Carter, pout at me and hold it in until you were about to explode. Her voice thickened with a nasal note, yet her face wore a smile more awkward than crying, full of endless bittersweet affection. I was actually so happy I wanted to cry. She lifted a hand as if to wipe the tear away, but froze midair, fingers trembling. Because only then did I feel that you idiot, finally cared about me. Time seemed to freeze entirely in that moment. The cold cryo chamber cast its pale blue halo like an entrance to the underworld or a bridge between life and death. Beyond the great floor-to-ceiling windows lay the bustling, indifferent urban jungle. And at this pinnacle of technology and power, a truth wrapped tight in 2 lifetimes of misunderstandings and a cold exterior. That reckless, self-destructive love finally tore off all disguises and shackles, raw and bleeding before my eyes. I looked at the woman in front of me, stubborn, formidable, burdened with mountain-high responsibility, living like a precision machine across lives, yet for one hope so vanishing she gambled an empire and her entire life. I watched the crystalline tear on her cheek and that fragile, honest smile. The cold barrel of a gun in a past life, a shredded employment contract in this one, frantic road interceptions, commanding orders in the office, a breakdown of accusations on the rooftop. All the scenes, like broken shards of mirror, were at this moment reassembled by this belated, soul-appending confession into a vast tableau I had never truly seen. The crack of my defenses was torn to pieces in an instant. The hard wall collapsed with a crash, revealing the chaos beneath, yet also an interior so searingly hot it burned. I opened my mouth, but my throat felt sealed by a searing iron, no sound escaping. Only my heart thudded wildly in my chest, a dull, overwhelming ache mixed with the sharp sorrow of something lost and found. I understood. I finally understood what lay behind the line. You died so gallantly last life, so what are you hiding from this one? What kind of all-consuming pain and reckless abandon it concealed? The freezing pod's eerie blue light, like cold stardust, filled the terrifying silence of the space. The low hum sounded like the mournful cry of life being forcibly put on pause, and like a brazen declaration of war against the Reaper. I froze where I stood, my gaze involuntarily drawn again to the cold chamber emitting that pale blue glow. It was no longer a Taylor Group money-burning gimmick, no longer an unattainable sci-fi concept, but this woman before me, staking the entire empire on a gamble against death. Every word of Sophia Taylor's hit me like a branding iron, searing my soul and leaving an indelible mark. Bring you back, overjoyed to tears. Finally, someone who cares about me. The image of her rushing through the cold rain in my past life to check Noah Carter's wounds collided with the woman now before me, who had bet the whole business empire and poured everything into buying a slim rebirth ticket from death. Two utterly different images tore and slammed against each other in my mind until they thundered together into one. It wasn't that she didn't love. She loved too deeply, bore too much, and expressed it clumsily enough to break the heart, twisted enough to suffocate. What I had taken as evidence of betrayal was actually a vow she upheld with her life. Those favoritisms I resented were, in truth, the bitter and secret source of her sweetness. The love I had guarded with my life was never one-sided. It had been returned with the same ferocity and recklessness. Only damned fate and pitiful misunderstandings had forcefully separated two lifetimes. A huge sense of absurdity and a belated, crushing pain overwhelmed me. I staggered and had to steady myself on the cold instrument table beside me to avoid falling. My throat felt packed with burning coals, red-hot and agonizing, depriving me of voice. Only my heart pounded wildly in my chest, each beat tugging at a dull ache and sourness that cut to the bone. I looked at Sophia Taylor. She still stood there, spine straight, as if she were a plum tree braving a blizzard. But the tear tracks on her pale cheeks, the quiver she couldn't hold back in her fingertips, and the torrent of nearly desperate love surging from the depths of her frozen eyes, all silently told me how fragile she was beneath her force-proud facade. My gaze slowly swept over the priceless cryo chamber, over the precision instruments that glinted coldly. This was the rebirth she had staked the Taylor empire on. A gamble bordering on myth? All for me? An inexplicable ache and sourness instantly toppled all my prior anger and resentment. At that moment, Noah Carter, who had been standing guard by the door, stepped in quietly. His eyes flicked over my distraught face, then fell on Sophia Taylor's strained back. His expression was complicated. "Ethan," Noah Carter's voice was low and clear, breaking the suffocating silence. "There's something I think you should know." I looked at him blankly. Noah walked to Sophia Taylor's massive desk and pulled open an unremarkable drawer. There were no documents, just one small object lying quietly inside. It was a hand-carved wooden dog. The carving was crude, and on the dog's neck, crookedly etched, was the name Ethan. In my past life, when our relationship was still vague, I had once passed a street stall, found it amusing, and bought it for her. She had glanced at it, called it childish coldly, and set it aside. I always thought she had thrown it away long ago. Noah Carter picked up the wooden carving, smooth, shiny from being handled, and gently set it on the cold lid of the cryopod. The rough, clumsy carving contrasted absurdly and sharply with the silver-white, futuristic hull. "She kept this, Sophia always hid it," Noah Carter said with a sigh. And he paused, looked towards Sophia Taylor's back, seeming hesitant, but he continued, "The day you started, she smashed a tablet and lost her temper. Actually, that night, she locked herself in the kitchen and followed an online tutorial to make the hometown dish you once mentioned, wanting to give you a surprise." His voice dropped. "She burned her hand with the oil, covered in blisters. Even after ointment, it was swollen for days." His gaze turned to me, carrying an almost pleading understanding. "She never knows how to express herself. When she cares, she only knows how to order. When she values someone, she only knows how to be domineering. She thought binding you to her, using favor to force you to stay, was protecting you, was keeping you inside her territory. Stupid as hell, right?" Sophia Taylor shuddered violently. She still didn't turn, but the fingers pressed against the pod wall curled tighter, the knuckles white from gripping. Having these clumsy, Shameful details exposed by her brother in front of her shattered the fragile shell of pride she was barely holding together. My eyes were fixed on that small, rough wooden dog. The image of her coldly discarding it in my previous life and the reality of it being treasured in the most private drawer now were like two sharp knives piercing my last defenses. In the burned hand, she actually did these things for me? All my defenses, all my resentment, all the cold barriers I had built across 2 lifetimes collapsed in that moment. Under the cryopod's pale blue light, under the silent stare of the wooden dog, before Noah Carter's clumsy, heartbreaking revelation of love, tumbling down with a roar. My heart broke wide open. What rushed in was no longer anger, but an overwhelming, belated tide of ache, regret, and a recovered, enormous sorrow that nearly drowned me. I finally saw what lay beneath that cold, hard exterior, a clumsy, stubborn, self-destructive, scarred heart that loved me. I took a deep breath, the air carrying the bitter and burning swell in my chest. Slowly, step by step, I walked toward that stubborn figure. My steps were light in the cold, silent space, yet felt as if they bore 1,000 weights. I reached Sophia Taylor from behind, close enough to smell the cool scent in her hair and distinctly feel the tiny, involuntary tremor of her body. I said nothing. I only reached out, my movement hesitant yet resolute, as if making a last gamble after the fog lifted, and gently placed my hand on Sophia Taylor's slightly trembling shoulder. Her body froze instantly. The touch was light, but like an electric current, it pierced every bit of her pretense and forced composure. She spun around like a terrified, desperate little animal cornered, her eyes rimmed red with tears not yet dried, brimming with defensiveness, boundless grievance, and a bottomless fragility. She glared at me as if silently screaming, "What more do you want? What exactly do you want?" That look stabbed my heart hard. That M.Y. Adam's apple worked painfully. I spoke, my voice hoarse and raw, carrying a tenderness I had never known and a deep, post-traumatic exhaustion. Sophia. I called her name, not the cold Sophia Taylor, nor the polite Miss Taylor. Shall we go home? The 2 words, go home, were like a long-sealed key, suddenly prying open the dam of emotion she had been struggling to hold back. She bit her lower lip hard, trying to stop the tide of tears, but large hot drops slipped free and fell, splashing on the back of my hand, resting on her shoulder, scorching and searing. Her shoulders shook violently. Her silent weeping turned gradually into suppressed, broken sobs. The pride in the facade that had held up for so long under a mountain of burdens collapsed utterly before that one phrase. Shattered. Routed. She didn't answer. She bowed her head abruptly, pressing her forehead heavily against my chest, both hands clutching the front of my shirt, as if she were a child lost too long in the dark, finally seeing the light of home, and she began to wail. In that crying was the heart-rending anguish of watching me fall into a pool of blood in another life. The terrified unease of carrying the secret of rebirth alone in this life, while chasing my shadow, the injustice ripped open by the truth, and above all, the sense of survival after catastrophe now that every shackle had crashed away. I stood frozen for a moment, feeling the warm wetness against my chest, feeling her body trembling violently. A strange but overwhelming surge of protectiveness flooded my chest. Slowly, hesitantly, I lifted my arms and then, firmly yet carefully, pulled this woman, shaking all over, fragile, into my embrace, as if I wanted to press her into my bones and blood. Noah Carter watched the scene, quietly let out a breath, a look of relief and comfort softening his face. He stepped back soundlessly, gently closed the heavy alloy door, leaving this space soaked with tears and truth to the 2 of us. Lovers who had crossed life and death and pierced through layers of misunderstanding to finally hold each other. The dim blue cryo chamber still stood silently, a solemn witness. Outside, the city's neon flashed without a sound. The cold light fell on us embracing, as if gilding this long overdue hug with a fragile, dreamlike halo. After a long while, Sophia Taylor's sobs gradually subsided, leaving only slight sniffles. She lifted her head from my arms. Her eyes were swollen and red like peaches, her nose tip reddened. The formidable, chilling dominance she usually wore was gone. replaced by near-childish disarray and complete dependence. I reached up and awkwardly, with my fingertip, wiped the tear tracks from her face. The simple gesture paused us both, as if time had briefly reversed to the hazy days when we first clumsily tested and drew near to each other. That home! Sophia Taylor's voice still carried a heavy nasal tone, somewhat muffled. Is it still there? She was asking about the small marital flat from our previous life, a place that had held fleeting warmth and left behind endless regrets. Want to go see? I looked down at her, a faint but incredibly gentle smile tugging at my mouth. It was no longer the cautious flattery of the past life or the icy refusal of this one, but a peace that comes from surviving life and death, and a slight, cautious hope. Sophia Taylor looked up at me, a small, real light finally rekindled in her swollen eyes. She nodded vigorously, like someone drowning who had grasped the last piece of driftwood. I drove, with Sophia Taylor beside me, through the familiar streets. The city's nightscape shimmered with light, but it had become a blurred and irrelevant backdrop. The car rode in silence, yet the atmosphere was no longer icy and taut. It was a tentative warmth, like survivors after a catastrophe. The car finally pulled up beneath an upscale residential complex that, to the wealthy, might not be top tier, but to us held profound meaning. The place we had lived together in our previous life. The elevator rose slowly, the numbers ticking up one by one. Sophia Taylor stood beside me, her fingers unconsciously twisting at the hem of her clothing, betraying her inner nervousness. I watched our reflections in the mirrored elevator doors, my heart full of mixed emotions. Ding! The elevator doors slid open. The familiar hallway, the familiar dark brown front door. I froze, staring at that door that carried so many memories, feeling a swirl of emotions. I instinctively raised my hand to input the combination code we had set in our past life, the one made from our birthdays. But Sophia Taylor beat me to it. She reached out and gently placed her finger on the fingerprint scanner. Beep! A crisp, pleasant electronic tone sounded. Then an impassive mechanical female voice, fingerprint verified. Welcome home, mistress. The lock clicked and opened. I stared, numb, as Sophia Taylor pushed the door inward. The entryway, the living room, the familiar furniture and decor, everything remained just as we had left it. Clean, immaculate, as if time had been enchanted here to stand still, waiting only for its owners to return. She walked in first and stood in the foyer with her back to me. Beyond the huge floor-to-ceiling windows, the city's dazzling nightscape spread out, neon lights shimmering and flowing like an inverted, glittering river of stars. I followed and stood behind her, taking in this familiar yet otherworldly space, my shock beyond words. At that moment, Sophia Taylor slowly turned around. The neon outside formed a brilliant halo behind her, outlining her exquisitely beautiful profile, almost unreal in its loveliness. Tears had not yet dried on her face. Her eyes were still swollen, but now those once frozen eyes clearly burned with a rekindled, searing love and an almost obsessive, unquestionable possessiveness. She looked at my astonished face, and the corner of her mouth lifted into a smile. Tearful, yet startlingly bright, even a little smug. Her voice was soft but seemed enchanted, striking my heart with an authoritative, possessive proclamation and an undissolvable depth of feeling. Rebirth is no coincidence. Ethan Johnson. She stepped forward, and before I could fully recover from the sight, wrapped her arms tightly around my waist and buried her face deep in my warm chest. Her voice came muffled, filled with unprecedented coquettishness and contentment. Someone bought a one-way ticket from death with all their wealth. She lifted her head. In her tear-glittering eyes, my stunned face was clearly reflected, as was the urban neon outside, as spectacular as the fireworks of death in our previous life. As for this life, she rose slightly onto her toes and leaned close to my ear. Warm breath brushed past me with a trace of mischief and an undeniable force, like the sweetest and most lethal of spells. You were already held in my palm in the last life. My mind thundered. The cold muzzle from my past life and the steaming, tear-filled eyes before me in this life overlapped. The moment the words fell, she no longer gave me any chance to think, retreat, or react. Tilting her face up, she kissed my slightly parted lips, parted from shock, boldly and with determination. That kiss tasted bitter and salty with tears, thrilled with the rapture of what was lost and found, carried the surging love repressed across two lives, and bore an undeniable, domineering proclamation. This time, she would never let go. My body first went rigid, then a tremendous warmth and the joy of recovery instantly breached all the dams of my reason. I closed my eyes, turned my hands back to clasp tightly, with all my strength, the warm, real body in my arms that had given everything for me and even dared to gamble with death. Deeply and passionately, I answered that belated kiss that crossed life and death and pierced misunderstandings between worlds. Outside the window, the neon of the financial district still glittered and felt cold, like the deadly, intertwined lights of that rainy night in my past life. Inside, the long-buried love finally broke ground and was reborn, rekindling in the city's cold steel forest the warm and eternal fireworks that belonged only to us.